Welcome back to the Alamo Ranch Board podcast. We are here once again with an amazing, thought-provoking, extensive podcast for everyone to hear. And with me today is Stephen Haskin.
Extensive and long is a good word to describe me when I get talking.
Well, we'll just have to prove that out then for the next little while.
Okay.
All right. Well, Stephen, tell us about yourself. Introduce yourself for people who might be new to the ward, who don't know you. Where are you from? How long have you guys been in the ward? And tell us a little bit about your family.
Yeah, sure. So I live here with my family, my wife, Heather, and our three kids, Seth, Evan, and Leah. We moved into the ward in March 2020. We were hoping that our kids could grow up in a ward with a lot of youth, and we thought, let's just move during the school year so that our kids don't have to worry all summer about going to a new school. And so we decided to move spring break of March 2020 when our kids, left school and never went back for that year.
I was going to say, right, like pandemic hits and you're like, let's move. That's your first instinct.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, well, technically, we didn't know the pandemic was going to happen when we bought the house. But we literally moved in like the week that schools closed. So yeah, so that was an interesting experience. But I was born in Tennessee when my dad was going to grad school. We moved up to Minneapolis. He was working for an airline that was based out of there. And so I spent my growing up years from age 5 to when I left for college in a suburb of Minneapolis called Lakeville, Minnesota. And it was an amazing place to grow up.
Into 1,000 lakes.
Yeah, 10,000.
10,000 lakes. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to shortchange.
No, you got to get it right. Yeah, so Minnesota was a wonderful place to grow up. I was one of maybe 10 kids in my high school of about 2,000 kids. So it was, in some ways probably fairly similar to the experience that many of our youth have here in Texas, where there wasn't too many of us, but I really felt like the church was strong there, and that was obviously an important and huge part of my life. My dad converted to the church when he was 10. My mom's got Pioneer stock, so we've kind of got both angles going on there. Actually, interestingly, through some family history work, we found out that Dad has Pioneer stock too.
Really?
Yes, and then they went away from the church and somehow found the church again. So when we discovered that on Family Search, my grandma, who kind of joined the church around the same time as my dad, had no idea.
Wow.
We had ancestors that lived in Nauvoo and met Joseph Smith and
then went north to Minnesota.
Well, they were from Idaho.
Okay.
So yeah, this was Idaho. So I guess it's not that surprising for somebody that was in Idaho to miraculously find out that they had pioneer heritage that they didn't know about.
Okay, and where did you meet your good wife, Heather?
So we met at Brigham Young University in Provo. We were in the same ward in a little apartment complex called Campus Plaza, which is just right south of campus. She came over, the first time I met her, she was actually coming over to invite my roommate to go hike Timpanogos with her. I had just moved in and didn't know anybody, and I was by myself in the apartment, and I was on the phone talking to someone, and someone knocked, and I said, well, I hope it's a cute girl, and I opened the door, and there was Heather. I don't think she even remembers this experience necessarily, but she asked if my roommate was home, and he wasn't. Then we ended up being in the same dinner group, and then the rest is history.
How long from that time did you met until you were married?
So we met in the summer, but we didn't start dating until October, and so then we dated from October to February. So it was a pretty quick, Latter-day Saint courtship where she came to visit my family around Christmas time, and we got engaged in February, and we got married in July. So about a year between when I met her.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually fairly similar to Audrey and I's timeline, except we got married in March. But like we met in July, started dating in September, engaged at Christmas, married in March. So yeah, less than a year. Fast mover.
Yeah. When you know, though.
That's right. No, it's true.
I guess.
Get to that point where you're like, okay, yeah, I mean, there's nothing else to find out here,
Right.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot to find out, but...
Right. Yeah. But sometimes the decision, that it's the right decision, even if you don't have as much information as some people think you should.
And we're to the point where we know each other well enough and we feel comfortable and like this feels like the right thing to move forward. I just remember feeling that, like, I don't know, like that peaceful feeling. Of course, I always tell Audrey, like, I knew before she knew, which may or may not be true, but that's what I say.
Yeah, we've never had that talk about like who knew first. I don't know.
I've always been a decisive fast mover anyway.
There you go.
Awesome. So then how did you make your way to Texas?
Yeah, so kind of a roundabout way. So At BYU, I was studying organizational psychology. So psychology was my major, but I wanted to kind of put a business spin on it. My stake president growing up was a human resources guy, but he was like not the human resources guy that like, let's help you fill out your new hire paperwork. He was the human resources guy that was like, let's go into a big company and let's like teach people about Stephen Covey, 7 Habits, and like that leadership development, professional development kind of a thing. And I was like, that sounds cool to like be in business, but like doing something with people and like helping people grow. And I graduated in 2009 and the economy was not in a great spot right then.
Rough time to graduate.
Yeah. And as a bachelor's of psychology, but not actually wanting to like do counseling and stuff, which is what a lot of people do in that major. I just didn't have a lot of great opportunities. And I had always thought I was going to go and get a master's of business administration like my dad and my stake president and kind of go down that path. And then I saw a flyer in one of my classes about the Masters of Public Administration program. Oh. So that's kind of like an MBA, like it's business administration type of a skill set, but it was for the public sector. And so I went to some info sessions at BYU, ended up going to George Washington University in DC to get my Masters in Public Administration because I thought, hey, if I'm going to work in the public sector, I could work for the federal government or I could work for a nonprofit or, something like that. And DC was kind of a, that would be a good hopping place to be.
Yeah. And George Washington is a great university too. You must have got good grades in your undergrad.
I did okay. And so, so we moved out to DC, and we were there for 2 years. I had no idea what I wanted to do. Heather's super smart. She had her associate's degree the summer after she graduated from high school. She had her bachelor's degree. Or she had her master's degree at the same time I got my bachelor's degree, and she's 3 years younger than me. So she's really incredible. So she had her master's degree in speech therapy, and she started working in a school setting when I was going to grad school. And our career office did these like weekly seminars from different organizations, and DC public schools came by. I didn't realize that schools needed people that weren't teachers, and I have kind of an administrator's type of a skill set. And so my wife encouraged me to apply, and I did that, and that got me into a career in education. So once I graduated, I was ready to move out of DC. We'd had Seth at that point, and Heather really wanted to stay home. And so my boss had moved down to San Antonio, my boss from DC Public Schools, and we had a really great relationship. And he came down here to work for a public charter school, which is a public school, free tuition that serves primarily low-income kids inside Loop 410. And that was kind of my sweet spot. I really got passionate about education, particularly for kids in underserved communities. And so he came down here, and after a few months, he called me up, and I was getting ready I wanted to leave, but didn't have a job yet. And he said, I need you down here. So, wow. So he wrote a job description that was, pretty customized to me, which was just an amazing blessing that I would have never expected. And we moved down to San Antonio. I'd never been to Texas.
So that was a big leap of faith.
Yeah. So it was a leap of faith. But again, I mean, it's kind of like the marriage thing we were talking about earlier where, we didn't have a lot of information. Yeah. But I just felt like it was the right thing to do. And we're so glad that we've moved here since then. My sister and her husband have moved here. My parents live in the area.
I was going to say, I know you have family nearby, but you were the first ones to sort of break into the area. And then you brought others here with you.
Yeah.
Awesome. I guess that's similar to us too, because even though Audrey's parents moved to Bandera before we moved here, since we moved here, they moved into town, and then her sister also moved here. So we're attractors. We bring
people just follow cool people around, right? Imitation is the form of flattery, right?
That's right.
Something like that.
That's right. Okay, so that's how you came to be here, and then 2020 pandemic hits, and you're like, we want to move. Let's move to Alamo Ranch, and so came into the Alamo Ranch ward during the onset of a pandemic, and then as if that wasn't enough. You also, I don't know whether we keep this in or not, but you departed a calling in the bishopric in your ward to move over here. Mm-hmm. And you're like, I'm free. I don't have to do this anymore. And then this crazy guy gets called. And then a couple months later, you get called to be in the bishopric in the Alamo Ranch ward for a second tour of duty.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you know what they say, though, is that if you get called to the same calling, maybe the Lord needs you to, you didn't learn it right the first time, and he needs you to learn the lesson.
Every ward is different. So the opportunity.
Yeah, it was so different here.
The learning that you had in the first time through the calling is, totally different the second time through the calling because the people are so different. The ward is so different. Everything's so different.
Yeah, that's really true.
Okay, before we get too deep into the ward stuff and calling stuff, I guess maybe that's just for people to know how we know each other so well because we served very closely together.
Yes, we did, and it was wonderful.
I might complete your sentences. You might complete my sentences. It's just how this works.
Yes.
But before we get too deep into like calling stuff, and some of that, what are your hobbies? Like, what are you into? What are your interests outside of being a school administrator?
So I work specifically in IT now. So I've always been kind of a tech nerd. I liked playing video games when I was a kid. And my mom babysat my best friend who wasn't a member of the church, but his parents both worked. And I don't even know how that whole thing got up, but it was pretty cool to have my best friend come over for like 2 hours before school and 2 hours after school every day for like 2nd through 5th grade and all summer.
So what was your like console growing up? Like what was your go-to?
Oh yeah, I mean it was just Nintendo and computers.
Yeah.
So his parents are both tech people. He had an older brother who was like 15 years older that like was a programmer at Microsoft, and so he was super geeky too. And so I remember he would come over to our house and he had this box with all of his stuff in it, and on the side of the box he had a log of because you remember the internet in the old days when you got the AOL CDs in the mail every other week, and when you bought AOL internet, like you only had a certain number of hours per month that you could use it. And so he had this checklist like on a marker that he would write like how long he had used the internet so that we could keep track of like we didn't want to go over the internet hours or whatever, because I didn't have the internet. I only had Juno, right? Where you had to
you dialed up
hook
directly
up your phone
in email,
and it was just email. So you'd log in, it would download your emails, and then you were off.
I have an aunt that I think still has a Juno account, by the way. That's great. Like so many memories. I collected 3.5-inch floppy disks from AOL, mailers. And so I'm pretty sure that I zipped and spanned a whole bootleg copy of Windows 95 or Windows 98, one of the two, across like 32 AOL disks, me and my friends. And then we would like pass around this like case of disks, for like whoever needed to upgrade to Windows 98.
That's funny that you have like this relationship with the AOL media. Like I feel like we could probably like write a book about like the weird thing that we did was when AOL moved to CDs is we would put the CDs in the microwave.
In the microwave.
Yeah, we never ruined it miraculously. You only have to put them in there for like 3 seconds, and it's really interesting because it like makes this like etching, like geometric, like crazy, weird. Yeah, it sparks and stuff like that. And then you take the CD out, and it's just got these like weird. It looks like some kind of alien crop circle or something got written on the bottom of the CD. So that's what we would do.
Well, that's funny.
So anyways, besides being a total geek, land of 10,000 lakes, my dad grew up with the boating life. And so when I was in middle school, I think we were fortunate enough that we were able to get a boat. And so we had 3 lakes within 15 minutes of us. So we would go, I mean, we only had, 3 weeks of summer.
Very short boating season.
But it was concentrated fun. And so
10 months of winter and then like 2 months of boating season.
Yeah. So the first weeks were always like, we got to get like, put the wetsuits on just to like not get hypothermia.
Yeah.
And so I loved water skiing, loved tubing. Water skiing was kind of a formative experience for me because my dad was really, really good at it. And that first summer, I think I was 11 or 12, and my dad was trying to teach us how to water ski. And I mean, we would go on the boat every week, maybe sometimes twice a week. We would try for probably 15 or 20 minutes. And I mean, literally probably took me 50 or 60 70, I don't know, just so many tries.
Drank half the lake.
Yeah, drank half the lake. Yeah, exactly. But I eventually got up, and so like that was super hard, and it really wasn't that fun. Like I just wanted to, like I basically got in the water to water ski so that I could earn the privilege of going tubing, where he would pull the 2 tubes and hit the waves, and we'd go flying and stuff, and I loved that. But looking back, I realized that like I was actually like pretty proud of myself that like once I eventually got it, like I got it.
Yeah.
And
so can you still ski? When was the last time you skied, water skied?
It's been a few years, but I think I probably still could. I mean, I'm a little bit more out of shape than I used to be back in the day. But yeah, we eventually got up to slalom skiing and stuff like that, where you only ski on one, and so I think I could probably do it.
I slalomed maybe a half a dozen times in my life, but I spent years trying to get up, and then finally I could ski on 2 skis, and then I graduated to 1 ski. And I maybe did that, like I said, half a dozen times. And then I stopped for, that was my teenager years. When I picked it back up later as an adult, I could only get back up on 2 skis. I could never get back up on slalom again. So that's maybe.
We had a cheater ski that like was originally my mom's, and it was like, it had a little extra buoyancy at the top, and it was a little bit wider. And so I think that's probably That was how I cheated.
Last summer, I tried to get up on a wakeboard for the first time, and
it's so different.
Very different. Like that didn't compute in my brain. And again, drank half the lake. This was also a lake in central Utah that was like in a farming community, and so the lake had little floaties in it, which I think it was mostly like alfalfa or whatever. Yeah. But like I was drinking half of that water, getting up on a wakeboard. And yeah, I only tried a few times, and I was like, yeah, I'm not drinking any more of this water. Plus, it was cold. It was June or July, but the water was still cold because, of course, winter.
Right.
When you're not in San Antonio.
Some places have winter.
Some places have winter. We don't know what that's like anymore. So what do you do now as an adult then? Like, say, like it's been a long night or a long day or whatever, and you're like, I need to decompress. Do you do coloring pages? I mean, some people, like what is your like Zen sort of decompression as an adult now?
Yeah, a couple of things. I really like reading. I enjoy like fantasy and science fiction reading. If I could like work up the willpower for it, I would try writing again. I took one of my favorite authors is Brandon Sanderson. He's LDS, but he's a New York Times bestseller. Yeah. Has a lot of really popular series, and he teaches at BYU. And right before he became popular, I got to teach his class. And so cool. Yeah, so he teaches a creative writing course every winter semester, I guess, January. So I got to take that class. Now it's like super hard to get in. You have to like write the first chapter of your novel, and there's like 1,000 submissions and only like 25 slots or something like that. But yeah, I luckily didn't have to do that. So I would like writing if I could. I like hanging out with the family, but yeah, life's so busy, when you're adult, and like sometimes it's like, what's your hobby? And it's like, well, I don't know. What's a hobby? Like, I don't really know.
I finish work, I pick up the boys from gymnastics, and I go lay down, and then I do it all the next day. Let's go back to churchy stuff.
Okay.
So you are currently serving on the High Council.
Yes.
And so tell us about that. What are your responsibilities on the High Council, and how long have you done that now?
So I have done that for has it been a year and a half, or has it been 2.5 since?
I don't know.
Since you terminated me for performance issues,
performance management.
Anyways, yeah. So I think it's been a year and a half.
Yeah.
And so as a High Counselor, there's 12 of us that report to the stake president. So we have a couple of meetings every month where the High Council meets together. Our primary responsibilities are each High Counselor is assigned, except for some. Most High Counselors are assigned to a ward that's not their own.
And what do you have a ward right now?
Yeah, so the ward that I'm assigned to is the Valley High Ward. Okay. So the ones that do not have a ward are the ones that are called in the Young Men's Presidency. Which so kind of like
burden in itself, yeah.
Yes, and so in my responsibilities to the Valley High Ward, my main job is to be an extra support to the Elders Quorum president, right? So stake presidents hold keys and bishops hold keys, and Elders Quorum and deacons and teachers, presidents hold keys. And so, but there's a lot of wards in the stake, and the stake president can't, directly give them all the attention that he probably would want to. And so the High Counselors get to go help out with those elders quorums and give them a little bit of extra support. So it's great to work with another ward and see how other wards do things. We also get to, in addition to your ward assignment, most High Counselors typically have a couple of, other duties as assigned. And so my other duties are translation for stake events, which is funny because I speak Swedish, not Spanish, not super helpful in San Antonio. But
if anybody needs a Swedish translation, though, you will be on it.
I will be on it. But so I'm assuming the Lord wants me to do that because of my administrative talents, because there's a lot of organizing that needs to go into making those events happen for the Spanish brothers and sisters in the ward, right? Like the Doctrine and Covenants talks about, every man will hear the gospel in his own tongue, and we've got a lot of people in our stake that speak Spanish, and so I think that's been really fun, and I've connected with a lot of really amazing people that serve their missions or grew up speaking Spanish, and just the love that they have for the language and for sacrificing extra time and not really being able to pay attention and stake meetings and stuff like that to go out and do translation has been really cool. I'm also responsible for helping the stake presidency with stake communication. Okay. So Brother Parks, who's in our ward and who's super amazing, is our stake communications person. And so we have people that help out with social media, and we were the ones that put the purple Easter banners out in front of the church that you might have seen.
That was awesome this year. We actually had like advertisements saying, come worship with us for Easter. Yep. Like, we really do want you to come worship with us for Easter, please.
Yeah, it was so cool. And it's interesting because it used to be like, not only was it like not encouraged, it was like prohibited.
Yeah, don't do that. Put anything in front.
And then the
Banners or
church
signs or
centrally has, they provided the graphics for us and everything. And so it was neat to be able to do that. Our social media people. So huge plug if you're not on our social media page, San Antonio Stake News. I think we have an Alamo Ranch ward.
Yeah. A little less trafficked, but yeah.
So if you're listening to this, you should go like those pages. They're really cool. Our social media people are really doing some great work. They made daily posts during Holy Week, and we've been really trying to make sure that we're sharing uplifting content that people can share with their friends or just be inspired themselves, because your algorithm probably serves you up a bunch of junk food sometimes. And so to fill it with a little bit of fruit and vegetables is probably good too.
Surprising the impact that is having overall in the church and missionary efforts. A lot of people who may not be willing to talk to missionaries in person, or may not want a missionary to knock on their door, will engage with a missionary over social media. They'll chat to a missionary, or they'll, drop comments on a church-related post. And so, it's a good opportunity to share the gospel, just like we used to knock on doors and talk to people in the street, right? That's the new doors in the street, digitally. Well, that's a pretty cool set of responsibilities. It sounds like you're very busy in this call.
Yeah, it's definitely busy. And that's not even all of it. We also are trying to really ramp up our interfaith efforts. So the church has really put a big emphasis recently on trying to connect with other believers, whether that's believers in Jesus or believers in whatever. And so we've just recently called an interfaith person who's going to start going out and trying to form relationships with churches in our area. And there's this big, San Antonio has a huge interfaith community with all sorts of faiths that you probably don't know that are here from other areas. And there's an annual festival that we get to be a part of and stuff like that. So
that's awesome.
It is really neat.
I love the idea of us participating more in the faith community here, and not only contributing, but also absorbing, taking, learning, and it's, handshakes have to be shaken both ways. And so, there are many good things that, from other faith traditions, I think we can embrace and love and, and respect people for their faith and their devotion to their faith as well. So I love that. Man, you are busy. We should call you as the Sunday school teacher or something, so you can, have an excuse to get out of that stake stuff. I will say that two things stand out to me from my opportunity to work in the stake. One is you get such a great overview of the stake. Like you mentioned, getting to know other wards. You get to know other people across the stake, families and individuals who serve. And so you get this great sort of, we get so focused in the ward and the people really well in your ward, but sometimes it's really hard to know people outside of your ward because they just don't run in those circles. As a stake high counselor, you get to sort of participate in other wards and talk to more people. And in these various responsibilities, you incorporate more people into what you do, So that's the one thing that sticks out. The second one is you do get to see the differences between wards. What I mean by difference is you understand that not every ward is like the Alamo Ranch ward. It doesn't have the same problems, doesn't have the same people. And so you get a better sense of what's going on in the world overall, what's going on in the church overall. You learn so much from the way an Elders Quorum president in the Valley High Ward is handling a challenge with a member differently than our Elders Quorum president is handling a challenge with a member. And so, it's a great way to learn outside of the realm of your sort of immediate neighbors and community that we're in this ward.
Yeah. And I think that's just the model of the church, right? Even wards are like that, where left to our own devices, we'd probably just hang out with our own family and friends, or we would go to a church that had the most eccentric preacher.
Had the best band.
So I would definitely land in Alamo Ranch for that reason. Not for the band, for the preacher.
Yeah.
But the Lord decided to stick us into these communities, and we don't get to pick where we go. And I think the Lord just really wants us to learn from other people. It's not just we're on this solo wilderness adventure through life. The church helps us to cross paths with people that we would never cross paths with, people of different political beliefs and different families and different socioeconomic circumstances. And so what you just described on the stake level, I think also applies in our ward. And I think it's just a really cool feature of how the Lord decided to organize the church.
Absolutely. One of the tips President Gonzalez gave me when he called me to be the bishop was call people who are not like you to work with you. Make sure you incorporate different people's voices and different people's perspectives and opinions, and don't just hang out with the people that are like you, which I think was great advice.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Speaking of, the Lord and having experiences and putting these experiences in your path, I'd love to reflect on our time serving together. Mm-hmm. So this was not a question I gave you on the list to prepare, but I'm going to just spring it on you. What stands out to you from that time serving in that calling, either funny experiences, poignant experiences. What do you take away from an experience like that, where you're working week in, week out, very closely with the young men and the young women, working with me and Brother White? Were some experiences you had or what was your overall takeaway from, that time serving in the bishopric in our ward?
Yeah, it was a really great experience and a really stretching experience, like a lot of callings are. I mean, just on the lighter side, I look forward to every year church times change, right? And so we have to decide, when are we going to have bishopric and when are we going to have ward council meeting? And you bishop would be so ambitious about the early start time that we were going to get, which usually very quickly faded into a different schedule.
Yeah. It's like, let's have our bishopric meeting at 6:30, and then 3 weeks later, maybe we'll do 7. Can we do it in 45 minutes?
That's right.
Let's challenge ourselves.
See, the Lord was pushing us for efficiency. That's all you were doing.
It's true. And I've learned that over my time too, is how to focus and how to get more out of the same time, or do more in less time.
Yeah.
I remember when I started, I was like, we're going to need a long bishopric meeting. And man, when I was a counselor, we used to have 90-minute long bishopric meetings. Oh my goodness, they were so long.
Yeah.
And I can't pay attention to anything longer than 45 minutes nowadays.
Yeah.
I go to a movie and I fall asleep.
So, but bishopric meetings were wonderful. Another funny thing was just wondering, in what state poor Brother White was going to walk into our bishopric meetings in the morning. I don't even remember what happened. Some kind of he walked in with a cast and his face was all scratched up and stuff like that. And I think that was the worst time, but there were definitely some other times. And so it's just, you meet together every week and in the mornings, and you're trying to do the Lord's work, and sometimes it's funny and sometimes you're tired and sometimes you don't really get as much done as you think you should, and sometimes you wonder if you're doing the right thing. But it was just really special. Working with the youth was awesome too. And I think working with you, Bishop, especially, it was just so clear to me. My last ward, our average total roster membership, so not like average attendance, but our average total roster was anywhere between 0 and 2 when I was in the bishopric for the young men. And so some weeks it's like, what are we doing for young men's activity? Well, nothing, because so-and-so moved out and he was the only guy. So we're not doing anything tonight. And in this ward, we just have so many amazing youth. And it was just drilled into me from the beginning that your role as the bishop, your primary responsibility is to the rising generation. And so I felt that, and the importance of that work when we worked with our young people. I also had the privilege of working with the primary with several different primary presidents, and
the whole time you were in there, I think.
Yeah, the whole time. Yeah. And I love primary, and they work so hard over there. And the kids, kids are great, but they can also be really squirrely, and they can also be really challenging. And primary teachers, they don't get to fill their cup in the same way that the rest of us do by going to Sunday school and just being able to zone out and let other people comment and listen to a great teacher. And they do it week in and week out. And the rising generation, we often, started thinking about that as meaning the youth, but obviously that means our primary kids as well. And just seeing the growth that happens there, the spiritual experiences that happen there, sort of the crucible of being a primary or a nursery leader, and what that can do to your testimony and your love for other people. I thought it was great working in the primary. It was fun.
I love the primary teachers and the primary presidencies that we've had. And it is a very thankless job. I think a lot of people think about the youth and sort of the weekly activities and all the things that you do to make youth things happen, and sort of maybe underappreciate how much it takes to make primary happen every week, particularly in the summer in the Alamo Ranch ward. Just a plug as we go into summer, we need substitutes.
Yes.
Every week, our primary presidency is out there trying to plug holes in the primary.
Yep. After you get out of sacrament meeting, just go check in with Sister Christensen, and she'll probably have a job for you.
She'll absolutely have put you right to work. One of the things that stands out from primary is, we've been now, I think, on a multi-year journey of having the youth lead, teaching the youth how to lead, and expecting more of the youth over the last, I'd say 15 years, really. I feel like we're at the cusp of expecting more out of particularly the older primary kids, the ones that have been baptized.
Yeah.
I'd like recently having primary kids give talks in state conference and give talks in church and pray in church. I mean, we've always had the kids come up and sing, and I love a good primary song just as much as everybody else. Very moving and also fun to watch. And it's even more fun to watch from behind, by the way. People don't appreciate that, but there's people kind of squirreling around. You can tell who knows the words and who doesn't, know. And last Sunday we had one kiddo who's kind of, to the front and left of us who like started jumping during the song and almost like did a header right over the front. And so like I nudged Asher. I was like, pull his leg down. Like, we do not need the drama of this kid going down like 7 feet over the front of the roster. But yeah, I think we're in this mode, and I'm very interested to see what might happen or what, other things we'll learn as we try to incorporate these younger members of the church more into gospel living and learning and teaching and being contributors in the kingdom, not just sort of passengers.
Yeah, I think that's a really good insight. And, going from primary to the new, I never had to teach a lesson when I was a kid, or when I was a youth, rather, at least not that I remember. And, going from like, I give like a 30-second talk in primary, and then it's like, I'm responsible for a 40-minute lesson.
Yeah.
It's like, it is a big jump. It's amazing and a testament to, the youth and the experiences they have and how the Spirit can fill in the gaps, and that they can do it. But yeah, I think for primary kids, I think that just goes to show us that, we've sort of realized how much our youth can do now. And I think the Lord can probably teach us that our primary kids can do more than we give them credit for sometimes.
While we're on spiritual matters, I kind of want to go back to Stephen Haskin personally. Like, I'd love to hear about your spiritual formative years, whenever those were. Maybe they're still happening, right? We're all having spiritual formative years. But what, as you think back over your life, like what experiences have you had, or things that you've learned that you felt like contributed the most to your formation of your faith, or the formation of you as a spiritual person?
Yeah, so I would say probably, I grew up in the church, and I kind of have a like rule follower, goody two shoes kind of a personality. So I just did what I was expected to. But when I was maybe 15, I think, I just was kind of going through the motions with church. And in our stake in Minnesota, every 2 years, we did this thing called the Priest Laurel History Trek. And it was a really cool, it's like trek that we do here. They would hire like 3 coach buses for the stake, and we would go to like Nauvoo and Far West and Adam-on-Diamond and some of these cool church history sites. And I just remember being in Adam-on-Diamond, and it's just beautiful, kind of green, hilly country. And they did a fireside, and then they just told us to go off and take our scriptures, and we were out there for like 45 minutes. And I feel like that was the first time that I like really got it, right? It's like, well, like the plan of salvation, like I get why I'm here. And like the Lord has like this growth plan for me. And, I think I know that this is true. And, it reminds me of the primary song, My Own Sacred Grove. And for me, like I was lucky enough to have a pretty cool Sacred Grove type experience in a church history,
An important place.
An important place, yeah. I don't think you need to have that, but that was just a great experience for me. I think it also, reflecting on it now, just also underscores how important, church activities can be, right? Like sometimes we think of activities and we just think about like, oh, they're going to be fun, they're going to build relationships. But, a lot of people really form their testimonies and have really strong experience with God and Jesus when they're at church activities. And so that's how it was for me. And I feel like that kind of changed who I was. Like until then, like I like got C's in most of my classes and stuff like that. And when I came home from that, like I just felt like I was a different person. Wow. Because I felt like I knew that the Lord wanted me to do more and that I could do more. And so, I started just doing more in the church. I started going out with missionaries. I started studying my scriptures more intently, and it helped me in my personal life as well. Like I started getting better grades because I was like actually trying a little bit more than I already was. And I credit that to the Lord, and He wants us to be our best. And the other kind of major faith experience I had was, so I went on my mission. I had this really, really close group of friends that were on that same history trek with me, and all throughout high school. But I was the first to go on my mission, and of my kind of group of 4 or 5 friends, only one other one went on a mission. And while I was on my mission, the others all like left the church and went like on very, very divergent paths. And I came home from my mission, and one of them was this super, super smart guy. We're still great friends today. He's just such a cool person. he lost complete faith in God. And so he was atheist, and we had a lot of talks after my mission because he lived in Utah. I don't know why, if he was an atheist, that he decided that Utah was the place to hang out, but that's what he did. And we had a lot of talks, and I served my mission in Sweden where a lot of people were not religious. They had a lot of bad experiences, and there was a lot of sort of secularism. And so this seed of understanding of like, I can see what's good about that, and I can see that you can still be a good person, and I can see why some people are critical of religion in general, or don't feel like they can have faith in a God. And after my mission, I just remember this one time, thinking I was in my dorm room all by myself, and I just like didn't even know if God was there. And so I didn't kneel because like I just didn't feel like that was like, I just like sitting on my bed leaning against the wall, and I spoke out loud, and like I dropped all the like these and thous and I just talked, and I just really felt like I knew that God was listening to me.
That's awesome.
And so and we have ups and like I told you about an up, and then I had a down, and then I had an up, and so I think that just happens with our testimonies as we go up and down, and we've never really figured it out, and we just always need to reconnect with God in order to get that.
I mean, spirituality ebbs and flows, and I think that's very common. If I would love to know somebody who doesn't feel that way, because I feel like that's such a common experience in humanity, is that your spirituality, is like a moonbeam. You have to recapture it every night.
Yeah.
Okay. So as we conclude, any final thoughts, Stephen, that you want to share with ward members or friends or anybody who might be listening to this? Anything that comes to your mind that we haven't touched on, or just, something you want to share about yourself or your faith? Or
I guess one thing I would add is, life can be hard sometimes. And I think even people who look like they're having a hard time or look like they're having a great time can be going through really, really hard experiences, right? Like there's so many of us that are dealing with financial pressures or mental illness or just all sorts of stuff. And so I guess I want to end by just sharing my testimony that by connecting ourselves to God and to Jesus, like I said pretty clearly earlier, like there have been times in my life where I didn't know if God was real, and I didn't know if doing all this hard work that he asks us to do in the church sometimes was worth it. But I always come back to it because of Jesus, and because he died for all of us. And more importantly, I think that because he suffered for all of our sins, that he knows us, and his teachings will bring us to happiness. Even if the church is not perfect, even if our ward is not perfect, even if we're not perfect, trying to follow Jesus is always going to be the best way to be happy.
Amen. I love that. Thank you. Thanks so much for you're taking your time to share these thoughts and just bringing your whole self to this podcast today. And I'm sure that, your words and your thoughts will, I think, help somebody who listens to this. So,
well, I hope so. Thanks for doing the podcast. I think it's so fun to hear from the ward members, and I think this is a really fun idea. So sorry you guys have to take a turn with me, but for the rest of you that have already gone and will go in the future, amazing.
Thanks, Brother Haskin.
Thank you.